Okay, here we go. So we have now the next installment of the Heroes and Heroines series, and tonight we're going to learn about two amazing personalities. Both of these are modern day personalities. One is the Mashgiach of the Mir Yeshiva, Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz. Okay, he's big stuff. I'll tell you a lot about him. And the other one is even more modern day, Rabbi Mordechai, that his yahrzeit, Rabbi Yerucham's yahrzeit was today, Yuches, and Rabbi Mordechai is Tuesday night Chafei. Okay, so Mordechai is like, he passed away 13 years ago. I knew him actually, like not personally, but he was my neighbor in Kiryat Moshe, and I got a bracha from him a couple of times, and I would see him all the time. He was a very holy man, mamish in our generation. So, okay, so let's talk about Rabbi Yerucham. Rabbi Yerucham passed away 1936. So we're talking about pre-war, and so he is a very important figure in what's called the Musar movement. Okay, the term Musar movement is a term actually which was coined by a person named Rav Dov Katz. He wrote a book called a series of books called Tnuat HaMusar, which really means the Musar movement. Interestingly, the Musar movement is not. It could be argued like maybe it was trying to be a movement, like it didn't make it as much as other movements of the time, such as like the Hasidus movement, obviously, or the Zionist movement, which was at the same time. That those movements, you could say, is like it didn't get the same kind of fanfare that the other movements got, and that's obviously because it's the most important thing in the world is Musar, is self-improvement. So of course the Yetzer Hara is fighting very hard that it shouldn't become a massive movement, because if it would become a massive national movement, then Mashiach is going to come, and it's not like it's game over. So it wasn't as successful as a movement, but he was actually very very influential in changing the way the Muslim movement went, and he actually was. What he did was that was very game changing was that he introduced Musar into the yeshivas. Okay, that was really his thing. That the fact that in every yeshiva today that we learn Musar, that it's part of the program, that we can thank Rabbi Yerucham for this. Okay, so Rabbi Yerucham, so he grew up in the Musar movement. He was a student of the Alter of Kelm, and he was in Kelm for 8 months, only 8 months before the Alter passed away. The Alter of Kelm was Simchas Yisrael Ziv, and he was one of the students of Rabbi Yisrael, and he in Kelm just to give you a little bit of an idea of like what Musar is about. The word Musar means reins, to be like the Musar is the thing holding the animals, like holding around their neck. So the concept of Musar is that to have complete control. Okay, a Musar giant is a person who is in complete control of himself. In Kelm, they were very extreme about the self-control. For example, like there's a saying that if you would be waiting for a bus, if you'd be waiting for a bus and you would look up to see if the bus is coming, you would like get reprimanded for that. Because like, what are you doing? Like, why are you looking up? Do you think that you're not going to know when it comes? Do you think that like you're going to miss the bus because you didn't look up? You're just wasting your time. You're just curiosity. You just like, you have nothing better to do with your life than just to see if the bus is coming. Just do something with your life. Huh? So that the concept of having complete control, not to do things just because. So that's really how Kelm praised, how what they were promoting, what they were trying to teach over to the students, and really the concept of Musar, the concept of control, the concept of having your ideals straight, having your everything completely the way it should be. So that's what the Musar movement is all about. And he was very connected to the Alter of Kelm, to the point that when he passed away, he was broken. That like he was crying, bawling, and like he was saying to somebody that I just started to learn what it means to be a human being, and already you're leaving me. Okay, we're talking about Yerucham Levovitz. We're talking about the Musar movement. Okay, so you might want to leave, but you come back when we talk about Eliyahu, because he's more your style. So Yerucham, so he was very influential in the Musar movement, and he really felt that like he was getting from the Altar of Kelm just what it means to be a human being, what it means to be alive. He felt that his understanding of life before he met the altar and his understanding of life after he met the altar was two different worlds. His look at what I'm doing in this world and what it means to be a human being, just he saw the altar like what it truly means to live life. Okay, and that's really what he was giving to his students. One of his most famous students, one of Yerucham's most famous students, was somebody named Reb Shlomo Wolbe, and Reb Shlomo Wolbe was actually also one of my neighbors when I was in Givat Shaul. He's also he wrote a famous sefer Sfarim called Alei Shor, which is very popular in the yeshivas and the seminaries. You've heard of it? Yeah. So he writes that he comments about his relationship with Yerucham in the context of a Gemara. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin that there's a discussion about the Navi Yechezkel. There's a prophecy in Yechezkel that we read on the seventh day of Pesach called the Atzamas Hayaveshus. That there's a prophecy about the dry bones. That Yechezkel sees this vision of dry bones, and he says, "Bring them to life." And he commands them to come to life, and suddenly the dry bones they get skin, they get veins, and they get organs, and they come to life, and they're rising of the dead. And he says that those dry bones, that's Klal Yisrael, and I'm going to give them life, and I'm going to revive them. And so the discussion of the Gemara: did this prophecy ever happen? Was it was it real, or was it just a metaphor? So one opinion says that it was just a metaphor, and the other says that the other opinion says that you bet it was real. In fact, I am a descendant of one of those bones that Yechezkel brought back to life. So that's the Gemara. So Rav Wolbe would say about his relationship with Rabbi Yerucham that I am one of those dry bones that Rabbi Yerucham brought back to life. Okay, meaning that he looked at his life pre-Yerucham and his life post-Yerucham as the difference between being a dry bone, meaning somebody who's just dead and completely disintegrated into the earth, to a live human being, and that's what Yerucham did to him. That just from being a person that's just like going with the flow to a person that's actually living life. Okay, the meaning that this is what Musar is all about. Musar is all about control. It's all about being strong. And it's a very empowering way of thinking. It's a very empowering way of life. That there's downsides because it involves being strong and being a little bit strict and a little bit being like in the army. But if you do it successfully, it actually brings a person a lot of power. So that's what we're talking about. And that's where Rabbi Yerucham falls into Jewish history. And so he. When he first got married, he was interesting. One of the things that he that we'll see is he wasn't so into his family, which was an interesting thing. And most of his life he lived away from his family. Apparently, all of his children were born in the month of Teves. And that's because he would only come home for Pesach. That was the thing back then. That when he first got married, so he made a deal with his wife that I want to go to learn, and in those days, going to learn meant that you weren't living at home. Okay, so he went to Radin. He was learning in the Chafetz Chaim Kola, the Kola Kachim, and he was learning there for 8 years. Like he made a deal with her. I want to learn for 8 years, and the 8 years. What's special about 8? Obviously, 8 is above nature, right? So he wanted to learn there for 8 years, and he would only come home for Pesach, and most of his life, he was living away from his family. Okay, so that's his wife was totally in on this. She was totally supporting him. When he came back after 8 years, he's trying to help his wife with the store that she was running, and she didn't let him. So she was like nobody should think that this is like he's cruel. Like it was totally with the absolute support of his wife, and the fact that he didn't bring up his kids. So we'll get to that later. And so after he was like his wife wasn't letting him work in the store. So he was appointed mashgiach in the Madin Yeshiva. Okay, now before he was in the kollel, now he's in the yeshiva, and that was his first position, that he was the mashgiach in the Madin Yeshiva. The concept of mashgiach is also something which is unique to the Musar movement. Like before the Musar movement, there wasn't such a thing as mashgiach. There was Rosh Yeshiva who was in charge of the learning aspect of the yeshiva, who was in charge of like teaching kids how to learn Gemara properly and how to ask questions properly and how to answer questions properly, and how to learn sugyas. But the concept of having mashgiach, that having somebody that's in charge of spiritual growth, okay, that's unique to the Musar movement. Okay, that's what we like the yeshivas before the Musar movement, like Volozhin and things like that. So they were like they didn't have a mashgiach. You come to yeshiva to learn. Okay, like not chas v'shalom. Of course, it wasn't like a university. It wasn't like you can't be a real Talmid Chacham without being a tzaddik. But it's because of the Musar movement that it became part of the concept of yeshiva to have that a mashgiach, that part of what we do here is spiritual growth. Okay. Now, there's a difference between a Musar yeshiva and a yeshiva that learns Musar, and that a Musar yeshiva is that what our focus is on personal spiritual growth, and we also learn because part of growth is to learn. Like part of being a religious Jew is to learn. But like that was unique to the Musar yeshivas. Okay, so the Kelm was a Musar yeshiva, and Radin was a Musar yeshiva. Radin, he was the mashgiach together with Naftali Trapp, who was the Rosh Yeshiva. Naftali Trapp, even though he was the Rosh Yeshiva, but he grew up in Kelm, so he was like totally breathing and living, and his veins were pumping the blood of Musar. And so he was very happy. They were actually friends, and they were excited. Like this, the truth is, when they were in Kelm, so Naftali and Yerucham, they talked about this dream of making a Musar yeshiva together, and this was like amazing for him that he was able to come. Now the thing was that when he came to Radin, he was a very charismatic man, Yerucham, and so everybody loved him. He was he was very charismatic. He was very, very understanding. He would talk to you for a minute, and he would just like get you in a second, and he would tell you exactly what you need to hear. And so the Levovitz, on the other hand, was a very, very unassuming man, extremely unassuming. Go for it. So the Levovitz, like for example, like people would go to the Levovitz, and they would say, "What did you see in the Levovitz?" And they would say, "I saw the most simple man I ever saw." Like Chafetz Chaim was unique, even though he was the greatest person around. But he was able to just make himself like he was nobody. Right? Like I'm sure you've heard the story about the guy he was insulting him on the train and like slapped him in the face. Like he was like, you would never believe that he was something special. Okay, even though he was the greatest person in his generation. So there were people that thought that it's not good that Yerucham is the mashgiach, because he's taking away the glamour from the Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim created this yeshiva, and you're taking away his fanfare, you're taking away his spotlight. And so because he thought that chas v'shalom, somebody should think that he's stepping on the Chafetz Chaim's toes, even though everyone loved him, and this was his dream, he left yeshiva. He said, "That's it. I can't do this. I'm going." Okay. So he went, and he was just traveling for a bit, and eventually he got to the Mir Yeshiva. He was known. He was most famous. He was most famous for his being in the Mir Yeshiva. He started the Mir. First he came to the Mir Yeshiva, and then during World War I, so he ran away, and then He went to other yeshivas, went to Slobodka Yeshiva, went to Panovich Yeshiva, and then he came back to the Mir. At the end of his life, he was in the Mir for the second time. That was his like famous time. That was his like it's at that time that he established the Mir as the Moshe Yeshiva, like the biggest and the greatest Moshe Yeshiva in Europe, and that was like he was having 300 talmidim. It was amazing. Like part of what he innovated in the world is that before his time, so the Alter of Kelm felt that Musar is something very, very, very special. It's something very intense. It's something that's only meant for a very particular kind of person. And so he was very particular as to who could come into the Kelm Yeshiva. Like the Kelm Yeshiva had like 30 people. Okay, they were amazing people. Okay, but it was only 30. And Yerucham, so his opinion was that was good for before the war. After the war, we need to just spread the light. So he when he was in Kelm for a bit, so he had this dispute with the son of the Alter of Kelm, but he didn't want to insist on his way, so he left Kelm as well. And then when he came to Mir, then he was able to really create his dream, and that is that to make a big yeshiva, 400 people, that people are learning Musar, and to spread this concept of Musar to the masses. Okay, so it's really because of Yerucham that it became like the Nachlas HaKlal, like the inheritance of everybody, that we have this. So he what was special about Yerucham is how much he cared for his students. He once told somebody that he went gray like relatively early, and somebody asked him like why is your beard so gray? And he said, I want you to know that every gray hair in my beard is for a different student. Like he really cared about his every student, and he really it irked him. Like anything that a student was going through, he took it really to heart. There was one particular student that his name was something from Tikhon, Alter Tikhon, Alter of Tikhon. So Alter of Tikhon. So there was one of the big things in that time was getting out of the Russian draft. Okay, being drafted to the army. That was the biggest danger. Being drafted to the Russian army was like really horrible. It was like nobody knew when you're going to get back. Nobody knew like if you're going to be able to be religious there. You couldn't be religious there. It was a horrible situation. So everyone in the yeshiva, so we're trying to get out. So Reb Alter of Tikhon, so what happened was that he sent somebody with some disability in his stead to go in front of him, and together with that he bribed the people on the committee that it should be okay. And the problem was that there was one of them switched. One of them was sick, so one of the people on the committee hadn't been bribed. And when he found it, when the guy came, so like said, hey, like you're really, I'm not like something sounds fishy about this. And so his father understood that there was a danger on his son Alter, that he might get drafted. And so when Yerucham heard that there's a danger that he might get drafted, so he didn't hesitate. He got on a train and he went 500 kilometers to Tikhon to speak to his father, to speak to Alter from Tikhon's father, that your son is learning very well. He understood that he was scared that his father would send him to America to avoid the draft, and he said, I command you cannot send your son to America. That he's doing very well. He's going to be fine. Okay, so he would say afterwards that about his gray beard that every hair in his beard that turned gray is for a different student, but half of his beard is for Alter Tikhon. That he really cared about. By the way, like Emunah, Emunah was his thing. His first shmuz that he ever gave as a mashgiach was about Emunah. And you've ever heard of Chatzkel Levenstein, who was also one of the Musar giants. So Chatzkel Levenstein was actually present the first time that he spoke about Emunah, and he said that shmuz that he heard from Yerucham, like that is what gave him strength for the next for his whole life. Like that, he was like Chatzkel was like a whoa. Like the truth is that there's very different. They're very different in their styles. So the Chatzkel, he was very big tzaddik, but Rabbi Yerucham was unique in the intellectual level of his shmuzim. Like when his son put together the shmuz of Rabbi Yerucham, so the sefer is called Das Chachma Umusar, the understanding of the wisdom of Musar. Okay, and there's something very deep. It happens to be that my Rabbi Frosh Levovitz. So whenever I would see him learning Musar, it was only Yerucham. He would only learn Das Chachma Musar. Like that was his go-to sefer. And so of course, after I saw that in him, so I did the same myself. And there's something very deep. There's something very like I'll tell you something. There was there's a story that there was a Bachar in Yeshiva that everyone was talking about the fact that he said something very exciting. So like say very exciting teretz to a Rambam, a very big kasha that everybody's talking about, and like one of the Bachrim, so he said an amazing answer to the kasha and the Rambam. Okay, so Yerucham called over this Talmud, and he said, I want to ask you something. How long did you think? How long did you think about that? How long did you think about that thing that the answer that you gave? He said 5 hours. Let's talk about 5 hours. So wow, that's 5 hours is not bad. Were you at my shmuz yesterday? When I spoke to the yeshiva, were you there yesterday? So he says, yeah, I was there. How long do you think it took me to prepare that? So he said 5 hours. So he said nope, more. He said 10 hours. He said no, more. A whole day? No. 2 days? No. A week? No. Eventually he got him to say, I thought about that idea for half a year. So, like, imagine that the depth of like refining an idea, of thinking about exactly what is the truth, what does Hashem exactly want me to do in this situation? Like, what is the difference between how does one fight the Yetzer Hara about this? What is Yerushalayim? What is Avos Hashem? What is Yiras Hashem? What does it mean to be dignified? What does it mean? Like, these are things that he brought things to a very lofty, very high level of thought. Like, Chatzkel Levenstein was known that like his emunah was like Hasidish. It was like Reb Zusha was like whoa, like Levi Yitzchak was like whoa, like I'm feeling Hashem constantly. But Yerucham was unique in the intellectual level of his ideas, and I'm sure that's why Reb liked him so much, and so this is Volbo also. I'm sure like that's what he was so attracted to. Like that Yerucham's Musar was a Musar which was very deep, very thought out, it was a very scientific way that he would blow you away with the level of the ideas that he would give over, and that was his thing. It was things that it's hard to explain in words. Like, I'll tell you a story that Rav Shimon Schwab, so he was the Rav in Washington Heights. He was the Rav of the Breyers community, KJ. So he was a student of Yerucham, and so Yerucham had a fund that he would let they would let the students borrow money, and so one time before Pesach he lent Rav Shimon Schwab money, and then after Pesach, so he came back and he returned the money. And he said, thank you so much. And he said, thank you so much. You know the story? And he said, and so Yerucham, he snapped at him that being polite by you being polite is more important than halacha. So Rav Shimon Schwab, he was Yakish, like the KJ Kehillah is the Yakish Kehillah, the Breyers community is the Yakish Kehillah in Washington Heights. So like German, they're actually very polite, So like you would never I mean, nobody would give back money without saying thank you. But the thing is, it's actually a halacha. It's actually a halacha that to say thank you might be ribis dvarim. Ribis dvarim is that it's forbidden to give interest, not just money, but even to do a person a favor. If that person that lent you money, so you're not, when you give back the loan, you can't do him a favor. And for example, you can't be especially nice to him. You can't be like, if you didn't used to say good morning to him, you can't now say him good morning because now that he lent you money. So that's called ribis. That's called giving interest. So that's why I have to make sure that if you're gonna borrow money from somebody, make sure to say good morning before you borrow. So, but it's actually a thing that to say thank you. It's a machlekas. It's a machlekas. I will say that it's a machlekas. I think Rav Yashiv said it's okay. Rav Yashiv said that to say thank you is because because you're just being polite, so it's not considered you're giving. I think actually maybe it's not Rav Yashiv, maybe it's Rosh Zaman.
Isn't it too extreme? Like money and ribbons, I would assume means money, right?
No, the Gemara says mefresh. The Gemara says mefresh. The ribis dvarim is also min haTorah. That's min haTorah. It says. So Shlomo Zalman said that the Gemara says to give a person a bracha is considered ribis dvarim. So Shlomo Zalman said there's a difference between a bracha and thank you. The thank you is just being polite, but to give a bracha is to give him something. Okay, so that's what Shlomo Zalman said. But Yerucham didn't feel like that. Yeah, the other person didn't feel like that, and to say that they think that the problem with the bracha is you're making him feel good. So when you say thank you, you're also making him feel good. So that's why it's called ribis dvarim. Regardless, that's not the point. So he said, Rabbi Yerucham was of the opinion that it's a problem, and so he said, oh, so being polite is more important than halacha. Okay, and that's certainly true. That halacha is more important than being polite. And so he said, okay, I'm sorry. And so the next year, so the same story happened. He borrowed money, and so when he gave him back the money, so obviously he didn't say thank you. So he said. So he said, what? Where's that curse of tov? Where's your? You don't. Okay, I lent you money. You don't. No appreciation. So he said, really? Like last year I did tell you when you told me that I'm going against halacha. So he said, of course, you're not supposed to say thank you, but I should see on your face that you want to say thank you. It's just that you're not saying thank you because it's ribis dvarim. Okay. That's something like maybe that's a bad example of the depth of Musar. Like his ideas are much more lofty than that. But he was.
Whatever you do, you're not good.
No. You're supposed to. He wanted to see in his eyes that he appreciates. That's what he was.
That's ribis,
no, because it says ribis dvarim. It says something about dvar.
Why is it dvar?
Dvar neshach. Called davar. It says called davar asher yishach.
So if it's anything that you give back more, then it could be an eye, it could be a facial expression, it could be anything.
No, the Gemara says it comes from the word davar.
But just
called davar asher yishach. So dibur is considered
so money and an expression of dibur.
Or actions, obviously. Like if I do you a favor, if I actually do something for you, then that's obviously ribis. So yes, so that's now there's a great story. There's a great story that he once there was a crazy story in the Mir that there were these students that they heard people like behind them, and they were scared that it's like people trying to rob them. So they started running away. They started running, and the people out behind them were right after them. So they were running, mamish like running for their lives, and then like they finally came into their place, and then there's like very, very heavy knocks on the door, and it was the police. It was the police, and so and they said, what are you doing here? I want to see your IDs. And so they all showed them their ideas, and it was fine. But one of them didn't have his idea because he lived somewhere else. So he said, "I'm sorry, I don't have my ID with me. So we're not letting you go until you bring my ID. So come with us. Just bring me your ID." So he went with the police, and he got to his apartment, and he showed them the ID, and it was fine. Anyway, the next day, so Yerucham comes to yeshiva. and he starts in his shmuz, like he starts saying, Rabbi say, I'll tell you the truth, that I was really thinking that we need to close down the yeshiva. I was speaking to the Rabbanim over here, and I don't know, they told me that maybe to give it another chance, but I really think, like, if it would be up to me, I would close the yeshiva. That you might have heard that there was a story that happened last night, that the police were running after some bachrim here, and I can't understand how could bachrim in our yeshiva allow their friend to be followed alone by these 4 policemen. First of all, don't you think it's dangerous? How could you not care for him to think that maybe something's going to happen to him and he needs protection? And even besides the danger, but think about what he's going through and think about what he's thinking. The stress that he's going there, the panic that he's going through, that you don't think he needs your moral support. How could you possibly allow him to go to his apartment alone? That if you are learning in my yeshiva and you don't realize that you need to care about your friend and you need to follow him home, then we are failing, and we need to close down the yeshiva, because we need to realize. I need to just realize that, like, I'm doing something wrong and I need to start from scratch, because a yeshiva that breeds students that don't realize that they need to care about their friend and be with him and go with him to his apartment, so then their learning is worthless. And if the yeshiva is not, if the yeshiva is producing students like that, then we are a failure. Okay, so that's what Musar was trying to teach. That's what Musar was trying to give over, and that's the caring. It's not just about learning. It's about being like a real human being, a real Jew, having your midos, having your Yiras Shamayim, that being the ideal person. Now, the last story I want to share about Yerucham is something that I think, like, puts his care about students into a different perspective. Something like about his beard. So I told you before that he said that every hair is for a different student. So on a different occasion, so he told the person that asked him, he said, listen, you only have a couple of children. I have 300 children. So that's why my beard is so white. So in that light, so the interesting story that one of his when he was involved, he was like trying to find a shidduch for one of his sons, and things were things were going wrong. Things were going like I don't know what exactly, but like there kept on being miniyot, and this one didn't want it for this reason, this one didn't, and like after like the fifth shidduch, just fell through, so like he started crying, and so like somebody in the family said to him, like, it's okay, like what's the big deal, we'll find the shidduch. And he says, no, like I thought Amunah was his thing. I mean, like his issue was not Amunah. Like he was not one to cry for self-pity. He was not one to cry that, oh my gosh, what's going to be, Hashem, why are you leaving me? Like that was not. He said no, Chas v'shalom, don't think for a second that the reason I was crying is because I'm upset at Hashem or I'm just upset with my situation. Like, woe is me. It's just that I realized, I always thought that I care about my students exactly as much as I care about my biological children. But I just realized that it's not true. I really care about my children more. And that bothered me so much. It bothered me that I was sure that I was at this holy level that I care about Hashem's children. The fact that one of them is my biological child isn't the reason that I should care about him more. And without getting into whether that's a correct approach. Obviously, he thought it was a correct approach, and he was a Malach Hashem. By the way, his wife that he didn't live with his entire life. So when he passed away, so she told her children that you guys need to know that your father was a Malach Hashem. Like that's what she had to say about him. That he was an angel. He was a superhuman, and so like that from his mentality of Musar, of living as a quintessential human being. So the way he saw truth was that I should care about every student precisely as much as I care about my biological child. And when he realized that he wasn't actually at that level, that he actually cares about his kid more, that broke him. Like that's he was like judging himself and being hard on himself. That I need to work on my Ahavat Yisrael. I need to work on my care of my fellow Jew, because I see that I'm not there yet. I see that I'm not where I would like to be. So there's so that's a little bit about Yerucham. There's obviously much more, but he was amazing. he was an angel, and he was and this concept of living life according to your ideals, that to live life that he would take like a luz, he would take a doch of like he would be of himself, of like how much time he's taking, to what time he wakes up, how much time he takes to get dressed, how much time he takes to eat breakfast. He would take a timetable of himself, because just to make sure that he's like on top of things. He was like, he didn't want that his time is just going away and just falling between the cracks. Like he was very he was holding himself to extremely high standard of being an elevated human being, and
What's the story with his wife? He said he didn't live with his wife?
But he would only come home for Yantiv. Like for the first 8 years, he would only come for Pesach, and then even later in life, he'd only come home for Yom Tovim. Like he was living in a shiva, and his wife was like with the family in some shtetl. Yeah. But not like style. Like once a year, he would be home. But like it was a different world, a different. It was actually a thing back then. Like in the Chavetz Chaim, and I forget who said that. Maybe it was a Talmud of the Chavetz Chaim. He also, I saw him. He would daven and give a shah. He was one of the last Talmud of the Chavetz Chaim that was alive, of Mordechai Zuckerman. You heard of him? No, he was Litvish. You wouldn't know. Mordechai Zuckerman, he was a big tzaddik. And so he said that in his time, that a lot of he was one of these people that they would go away from his wife to constant learning, and he said that at the time they felt they were steiging, at the time they felt that it was good, but in retrospect they realized that it was a mistake, that it wasn't, that it's he said that it would be worth it to travel 2 hours to yeshiva and 2 hours back, just so that your kids should see you every day. So anyway, it was a different world back then, and but he was shalom. He was certainly living in a superhuman reality, and to hold himself, like the mere fact that he was able to hold himself to these high standards, like that's such conviction and such control of himself, such willpower, and that's something that when we talk about him as being a malach, being like, that's what we need to take away. This, like, to be in complete control, to live our perfect life and not give ourselves any slack, not to like, if we think that this is the way that one should live, to do whatever it takes to get there. That's what Musar is all about, and it's something that would be a big schos if we can take that into our lives. Okay, longer than I had planned. What time is it? It's already 39 minutes. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you okay? Need some air? Okay, so now I want to speak about a even more modern day tzaddik, and that's Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, Zichrono Livracha. He was the Rishon LeZion. He was the fifth Sephardi chief rabbi of Israel, and
Rishon LeZion?
Yeah.
So many from Rishon LeZion.
No, he's not from Rishon LeZion. He was in Yerushalayim. But the Rishon LeZion is the way we call the Sephardi chief rabbi. Okay, so he passed away 2010, 13 years ago. I can't believe it's 13 years. It feels like yesterday. Like I told you before that Rabban Eliyahu I actually had the privilege to meet, and so what's special about Mordechai is that he is like a modern day Rebbe. He was a modern day Rebbe. He was like the last tzaddik that we know, that like people like of our time, that just everything was miracles, everything was supernatural. He was like constant Ruach HaKodesh, constant brachas, constant crazy like supernatural abilities. Besides the fact that he was just super bright and super constantly smiling, constant sense of humor, and constant tzaddik. Okay, so first of all, just like he was a dayan, like he was a genius. He knew everything from the time that he was 0, and he was one of the youngest dayanim. When he what was unique about him was so many things was unique about him, but even though he was Sephardi, like Sephardi Rabbanim have a tendency to be more like less thought out, more like less your own opinions, less like showing your wisdom. Like Rabbi Yosef, for example. So Rabbi Yosef was more like about like what it says. Like he knew everything, and he would just tell you what it says. And the Ashkenazi way of thought is more like, what do I think? Like, let's forget about what it says. Like what makes more sense. And so he was unique that in the Sephardi world, he was like more in the Ashkenazi way of thought. And also his contribution to the Sephardi world is that he brought back the world of Kabbalah to the Sephardi world. He brought the world of the Ben Ish Chai. Like he considered himself like a continuation of the tradition of the Ben Ish Chai, of Yosef Chaim in Baghdad, and like that was like a reaction to Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. The Rabbi Ovadia Yosef like basically took Kabbalah away from the Sephardi world, and so there was a little bit of friction between them. Like,
or he added halacha.
No, he took away. Yeah. Like he changed all the customs in the Sephardi world that took away Kabbalistic customs and made it just non-Kabbalah. And there was friction between Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Eliyahu. It wasn't like Rabbi Yosef really wanted to be the Rishon LeZion, I think, until he died, and Rav Kaduri and the Baba Sali were influential in getting him to switch Rabbi Yosef. So Rabbi Yosef was like a little bit upset with him, and there was like there was like politics between them. But Rabbi Eliyahu was in complete, amazing covered for Rabbi Yosef, and like he showed him like very open, like he was very open, like amazing honor, and anyway, but that was like maybe his contribution to the Sephardi world, but he was an amazing Kabbalist. His father was named Solomon Eliyahu, and he was one of the greatest Kabbalists of his generation. He wrote a sefer called Kerem Eliyahu, I think, which is one of the most basic fundamental Svarim on the Zohar. On the Kisvei Ari, on the Zohar. And I don't know Kabbalah obviously, but his father was considered one of the biggest Mekubalim, and when he completed Mordechai, he was like Kabbalist. He did everything b'tahara, everything. He was always going to the mikvah. He learned Kabbalah late at night. He always did David Netz every day of his life. Rav Yaakov Hillel, who's like one of the biggest Kabbalists alive today, would come before Mordechai to ask him his hardest questions, like in the middle of the night. Like he was like a Talmud b'fnei Rabbo, like a student before his master. Rav Yaakov Hillel looked at Mordechai as like someone 10 times greater than himself, even though he completely hid his knowledge of Kabbalah. It was an amazing thing. So So that's obviously because of his holiness. That's like that's where all of his like miracle worker, his like being a rebbe came into the picture. But he has amazing stories about like just how he was just brilliant, and he just knew how to always say the right thing at the right time. Once when he was in America, so this couple came before him, like they're getting married, and they want a bracha, and then he says what Eda are you from? Which community are you from? Like which how do you say Eda in English?
Community.
No, like in Sephardi, I mean.
What's your background?
No, it's like what's your descent maybe?
Your what?
Descent. So he said, I said I'm Moroccan. I said I'm Moroccan. So he said, oh, very nice. And you? And he said to his fiance, so he said, oh, actually I'm Protestant. I'm not Jewish. So he said, oh, that's so interesting. So what do you do? So Protestants like believe in God, you know. So he closed his eyes, and he made like he's like getting a vision from God. And I'm just imagining what he looks like. And he looks at her, and he says, I don't think that he's for you. You can do much better. He says to the girl, you can do much better than him. I don't think he's your soulmate. And so she looks at him and says, you dirty Jew, even your chief says that you're not good enough for me. And that's how he was able to get out of that situation. There was another story that how he was in America, that he was in Brazil, and they were at this event with like 25 of the richest families in Brazil, and so one of the philanthropists there, so everyone was billionaires there, and one of the philanthropists gets up and he says, Rabbi, can I ask you a question? He says, sure. So he points to another one of these philanthropists in the room, another one of the billionaires, and he says, Rabbi, what do you say about the fact that this guy supports the Reform synagogue in the Reform synagogue in our community? So what do you do? So he doesn't, obviously he doesn't believe in supporting Reform synagogues. But he also doesn't that's ridiculous to embarrass somebody in public like that. So he can't embarrass somebody, and he doesn't want to participate in embarrassing somebody. So he says, let me tell you a story. I was once in America, and I look at the clock, and it's time for mincha. So I tell the taxi driver, I have to pray. Bring me to a synagogue fast. So their entourage was 8 people, and so the taxi driver was not Jewish. He didn't understand the difference. He brought him to a Reform synagogue. So I couldn't go into the Reform synagogue. So we davened. So we're waiting outside for there to be a minyan, and so as we're waiting, so 2 people walk out. 2 people walk out of the shul. The rabbi of the shul, and some maintenance man. And so he says, oh great, now we have a minyan. So no, we need another one. So the rabbi says to him that I understand. Like if Reform people count for minions, so we're 10, and if Reform people don't count for minions, so then you're 8. So how could it be that we need 1? So he says no. The electrician. So he's just here for parnasa. He's not really Reform. So he counts, but Reform rabbi doesn't. You don't count for a minion. So that's also a discussion. Like according to Moshe Feinstein, so every Jew counts for a minion. But that's not the point. So Mordechai says that, but then the rabbi, he whispered in my ear. He said that, Rabbi, don't worry, I'm also here just for parnasa. I don't really believe in this. So of course everybody laughed, and that's to know how to de-escalate an an intense situation, just with humor, with stories, with wisdom. There was a. This is an amazing story. This is just how to de-escalate them. But this is also another chiddush in his personality. How he completely felt nothing of himself. He was completely willing to just embarrass himself and make nothing of himself. So there was a guy that came to him and said, Rabbi, I want to get divorced. Why do you want to get divorced? So he says, Baruch Hashem, I'm a very well-to-do person. I have a great business. I have a great position. And my wife, what can I say? She's cheap. She's cheap. Like I can't, like she can't get it out of her system. Like she was born poor, and she can't get it out of her system that she, like I tell her like to buy nice stuff, and she buys like just garbage stuff, and I can't take it anymore. So he says, like I hear what you're saying. I want you to come tomorrow. Come tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Come together with your wife. And so what he does is he asks he goes to the shuk. He goes to the shuk and he buys the most disgusting vegetables he can find at the shuk. And so he goes over to one of his secretaries, and he says to the secretary, I need your help tomorrow. Tomorrow at 9 o'clock, I'm going to be meeting with somebody. I need you to put on a mitpachat and pretend you're my wife, and tell you and take this bag of vegetables, and start yelling at me. Start yelling at me that why am I bringing such garbage home, and then start throwing the vegetables at me. So yeah, they're throwing these rotten tomatoes at me. So they're in the middle. So they're about to sit down. And like as soon as before the husband starts talking, so the secretary walks in and she starts yelling, "What? You couldn't find anything worse? This is it. This is what you bring home for? I'm supposed to make supper with his vegetables. Look at this! Look at this tomato! I'm supposed to make something else." And he throws it on his shirt. He throws the whole bag of vegetables on Mordechai. And he says, okay, I'm sorry, you're right, I'm sorry. And so they look at him like, whoa, what's going on? And said, no, she's right. It's okay that she's upset. Like it's really my fault. It's like I don't bring home the right foods. And so okay, yeah. What's up with you guys? And he's like, my wife is I don't know, some like he starts like mumbling, starts like stuttering, like can't get anything out of his mouth. So he says, I think maybe you want to like regroup your thoughts and come back a different time when you're yeah, that's what I want to do. And Baruch Hashem, they lived happily ever after. Mordechai, he had a what?
He wanted to get divorced?
Yeah.
The couple wanted to get divorced, but but he realized like if the Rav himself brings back like cheap stuff, so like how am I supposed to, like it can't be that bad, right? Another like fascinating thing that this is like a story that like came out by accident, that every Friday so Mordechai would mysteriously disappear. And so one of his sons, like he wanted to, he was so curious, like where does Abba go every Friday afternoon? So he decided he's going to follow him, and he follows him like as a spy, like without him knowing. He follows him to the street, and eventually he goes into a certain building, and he follows him into the building, and he goes, and like he sees him like putting on these white clothes, and goes into and puts on these boots, and goes into his room, and he follows into the room. Then when he goes into the room, then he sees that there's a bed with somebody with a sheet on top of him, and then Mordechai notices, and he's like, hey, what are you doing here? So, oh, I'm so sorry, like I was always wondering where you're going, so I decided I'm going to follow you. So he tells him that on Friday afternoon, sometimes people die Friday afternoon, and there's been, because everybody in the Chavah Kadisha is busy, so they don't have time to do the Torah. They don't have time to do the Torah so I don't want these people to go into Shabbos without their purity. So I decided that I'm going to volunteer every Friday afternoon to see if there's anybody that needs a Torah, and I do it myself. Okay. So that's like, and that's something he did, like, just like it's not a very mechubed thing to do. It's a holy thing to do. Chaver Kadisha, they're called holy. But like that was his activity every Friday afternoon for the chief rabbi of Israel, and nobody knew about it. It was completely secret. That even like if his son wouldn't have followed him, so then we would never know about this. He also had a thing that he was a kanai. A kanai means a person who is like not necessarily extreme, but a kanai is a person that does whatever it takes. Like extreme in their actions, extreme in not being a pushover, and in doing whatever it takes to get what you think needs to be done. Before the in 1950, he was actually in jail for 8 months because he was part of this club. I don't know what you would call it. This group of people that they had a plan to overturn the government and make a religious government. Okay, so and they were involved. They had weapons, they had guns, they had grenades, and they were planning on making a revolution.
What's the name of that? I need to look that up.
We know what its name is. I forgot.
Who's part of it?
Mordechai was part of it, and he was caught, and when he was put to trial, so he was very proud of what he said. Yes, I'll do whatever it takes to get for the Jewish nation. I don't care about the laws. I'll do yes. I had weapons. Yes, I was like he doesn't lie. He's a rabbi. I don't lie. I'm very proud of what I did. I think that that's what Hashem wanted me to do. And so he was and that.
He wanted to take over the government.
Yeah, he was part of this
Revolution.
coup. Yeah,
Didn't put him in jail, no?
they put him in jail. So he was in jail.
So he's definitely extremist.
What? He was
Yeah.
okay.
So how did they fail?
So he had this kanos inside of him, like in a toned down kanos. So there's a beautiful story about this girl that she was going to a seminary in Bnei Brak, and she went crying to Mordechai once that she felt very bad because her mother baked a cake for school, and she came. And the teacher said the head of the school said that she can't give it to her kids because she can't give it to her friends because her mother uses the oven with heter mechira things, which is a certain leniency. So Mordechai asked this girl, "Are you like? Do you have guts? Do you have guts? You're a strong person?" So he says, "Yeah, I'm strong." So he says, "Okay, here's the plan. Here's what we're going to do. The next time that the girls come to the head of the seminary for Shabbos, so the rabbi gonna, I don't know if it was a guy or a girl, but they're going to serve you tea, okay? So I want you to tell them that I want you to say, sorry, I can't eat your tea. Mordechai says I'm not allowed to eat your tea. So she said it, and she even said it a bit stronger. She said, Mordechai said that your tea is treif, that your house is treif. Okay, which is what he meant to say, but she said it more more insulting. And so after Shabbos, of course the head of the seminary called up Mordechai. So why did you tell this girl? So why is it that so he said very simple, because Ashkenazim, so they're lenient to make tea with tea essence, and tea essence isn't yatsa l'espel, and so they make Ashkenazim make tea out of tea essence and tea sense, and so according to Sfardim, so if it's not yatsa l'espel, so then it's called bishra. It's yesh bishra acha bishra, and what you're doing is breaking Shabbos. So because you're breaking Shabbos, so then she's not allowed to drink it. That's why I said that it's treif. You're not allowed to drink it because it's Chol Shabbos. And so he says, well, Rabbi, are you trying to tell me that Ashkenazim are never allowed to eat by Sfardim and Sfardim are not never allowed to eat by Ashkenazim? I said, no, that's not what I think at all. But you thought that because her mother had a leniency that you don't have, so then you can't, that treifs up the whole oven, and we have to say that it's completely treif. So if you are saying that her oven is, that even though it's kosher according to a different opinion, but it's not going to make, but if she makes it, then it's treif for everybody else. So if that's the way you feel, then your tea is treif for him. And so he realized that he made a mistake, and he says, yes, I was wrong. I shouldn't have told her that she can't bring the cake. And so like what I like about the story is like giving this girl like a sense of like, yeah, show it to him. You're like you tell him. You're like even though like he's the principal and you're the student, but like he believed like when something is wrong, you need to talk up. In general, empowering people was a very was a trait that he was very strong about. By the way, Mordechai, that we could literally give 15 classes about stories about Mordechai, because what's unique about him, more than any other gadol that I know about, is that he put together a series of books, 6 or 7 books, called Avihem Shel Yisrael, with amazing stories about him, and like everyone's amazing. Every story there is amazing, and it's just incredible. You can look it up. It's just wonderful, beautiful stories about him that were organized in like the first book is the stories that they heard during the Shiva, and the second book is the stories that they heard during the Shloshim, and then it's just story after story after story. So one of the stories that's how I prepared for this class, and so one of the stories was from one of the daughters of Mordechai, Merav Amar is her name, and so she during the Shiva she saw some lady that was just very, very broken, very crying, and she told her to come over, and she said like how did you know my father? And so she told him that your father saved my life. Your father saved my life. My parents, so they completely broke me. They believed that the way to raise kids is by giving constant critique, and they would always tell me what I'm doing wrong. They would never tell me I'm doing anything right, and they completely broke my self-esteem, and I was just a shever kli. I was just a broken, like a broken object, and like I would never be able to go on shidduchim. I would never be able to have a life. I'd never be able to get a job, and once I was just depressed, and I wanted to speak to Rav Mordechai, and my friends were telling me that he's such a great rabbi. You should speak to him. He'll be your rabbi, so they told me that I should go to his car. But I saw like everybody's surrounding him, and like I'm standing by the side, and so like he notices me before he walks into the car, and he notices me tells me to come. So I come, and like I see like all these like important people are there, and he says, what can I do for you? So he says, no, I don't want to keep you. You're already ready to go. He's like, no. He says, no, I have all the time in the world. What do you want? So she says, I'm embarrassed because like all these like important people are here and they're waiting for you. They're not going to leave until you go, and like I feel bad like making them wait and making you wait. I'm just uncomfortable. And he says, what do you mean all these important people? At chashuva. You're the important person. And she said that those words coming from him, just at chashuva, that suddenly my entire world changed. Suddenly, those 2 words helped me to like make a complete like switch in my mindset, that I was able to believe in myself. And like of course after that, like I came to many times, but your father saved my life. Like your father made me the person I am today. That I'm able to present myself. I'm able to believe in myself. I'm able to succeed in life. Okay, so yeah. What can I say? There's so many stories. He had like I said before that they had if we'll finish with just oh my gosh, it's so late already. Okay, so like just two things about it. He had very open Ruach HaKodesh. Like I said, he was a very holy man, and somebody you might recall that there was a pigua in Merkaz Harav, like no, you don't realize that. No, it was way before your time, but like 15 years ago. Like 15 years ago, there was what? Yeah, yeah. Time flies, huh? So the week before, so somebody invited him to a Chnas Sefer Torah next week. Okay, that the Chnas Sefer Torah happened to be the same night as the pigua in Merkaz Harav, where eight students were killed, and so he gave him the invitation, and he starts crying. Like it was weird. Like, why are you crying? I'm invited to a Chnas Sefer Torah. Why are you crying? And he says, Halavai sheyired shelek v'toyom. Sheyired geshem. Maybe he said, I don't know. That if only there would come down water, there would come down snow on that day. And so then there was such a strange thing to say, and so that obviously he foresaw that there was going to be fire coming down from heaven on that day, and it was so hard for him that night. So he made a tefillah. It was Rosh Chodesh Adar. He made a tefillah in the kotel, and he brought a bunch of students from Merkaz Harav that went with him to and like they were like, nobody knew what the tefillah was about, and when they came back, so like there was barricades and they couldn't come to the yeshiva. It was already after the fact, and so there was just a very open Ruach HaKodesh about lots of things. That's one of literally 1,000 things. He also had to think of Pikidat Akarot. What?
He predicted the war?
Not the war, about the pigua.
What's the
Terrorist attack. The eight students were killed. 8 students were killed in the yeshiva Merkaz Harav. It was the only time in recent history.
This, or?
Apparently he knew. Apparently, like a better question is that if he knew, why didn't he tell them, right? But apparently there's things that you're not allowed to tell. Okay, like there's another story that I skipped that like one of his grandson noticed once that it was that there was never any mosquitoes or flies in the apartment. There were never ever mosquitoes or flies in Mordechai's apartment. And he once asked his grandfather. He once asked Mordechai, like, did you notice that there's never like? So he says, yeah, I've noticed this like for tens of years already. I've noticed this, but I didn't think it was something to speak about. The next day, there was flies and mosquitoes. Like for decades, this miracle had happened, but it was only like on the condition that nobody talks about it. And then now that they talked about this, then it's okay. It's only flies. You feel bad for them, but yeah, wow.
I didn't know there were mosquitoes in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday, my roommates talk about how many mosquitoes there were. And I don't feel them at night. Really at night? Never. No. And the next day, last night, I felt them.
Wow. Okay. Wow. A tzaddik that I missed.
And I know
Okay,
why
so
it's important not to have flies, because I went for one Shabbat dinner, I opened my mouth, the fly came to my mouth.
So very quickly, he had a thing with that people would come to him. They weren't able to have kids. People that hadn't had kids for 8 years. People that hadn't had kids for 10 years. He had a thing that he would give. He would give from the esrog of Sukkot, the esrog that he would make a bracha on. So he would give out. His wife would make jelly from his esrog, and there's literally dozens, if not hundreds, of people that after infertility were able to have babies from this. There's a crazy story. Rav Menachem Borstein is one of his closest students, and he is the head of Machon Pua, which is in Givat Shaul, which is a clinic for helping people for infertility. Okay, and he has a lot of medical help and a lot of rabbinic help, and so he was always involved. He was very, very close to Eliyahu regarding these things, and And so he had this the story about this woman that the doctor said that her womb is just like not like completely cannot have a child. It's just, she's completely undeveloped, completely impossible to have a child. And they went to Mordechai, and Mordechai said nonsense. That here, have a piece of my esrog. You and your husband should eat from my esrog, and you're gonna have a ben zachar this year. And literally a month later, she became pregnant. And nobody understands how he would do things. Like he had supernatural powers. Like he really was able to do things against nature, against medical understanding, against the way the natural world works. And he was at a higher level. And it's like he was the last person I know about, last person that people talk about that to have open miracles like this, and open Ruach HaKodesh like this. And I felt very fortunate that I was able to get brachas from him. I was very fortunate to be his neighbor for the 2 or 3 years that I was his neighbor. And but there's so much that we can take from him of just of how to be holy, how to be sensitive, and Baruch Hashem that we have role models that we can try to go after. So l'chaim everybody.